On this week's episode, I am speaking with Dean Lettice, vocalist and frontman to the UK black metal band, the Infernal Sea. We go over the band's career, which has spanned just over a decade. This includes in-depth discussions of their EPs, LPs, and their ever-evolving stage presence. Their new album, Negotium Crucis, released last year, right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, which is fitting given the band's unique image replicating medieval plague doctors. But never wants to stay unproductive, we also cover some of the more interesting merchandise the band has released recently. I've been a fan of these guys for quite some time, so it's a pleasure to have an in-depth conversation about the band's highlights over the years. Enjoy. All right, how you doing, Dean? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. You?
Yeah, fine. Like I said, we just had a few sort of issues to begin with, but now we're here now, so technology, that's what it's good for, I suppose. One thing I was going to mention, though, especially in the last year, of all the people that should feel very fucking vindicated at the time of a plague, it's you guys. Of all the people. you prophesized it, mate. You called it. Maybe a bit 5 years too early, but goddamn.
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
It's I guess it's just one of those sort of lessons from history that just goes ignored until it's too late, I guess.
Definitely. Well, no, I suppose we were kind of expecting one to happen at some point anyway, not us personally, but I think as a species, I think we were expecting every 100 years, isn't it? We just seem to have ignored it, which is quite ironic, really, and now it's hit us. So,
yeah. And the thing is, I think when you think back as well, it wasn't really that long ago since you had, say, the Spanish flu, which took a lot of people as well. That was something like what, the 19, I forget the exact date. I want to say 1917, but it could have been later than that. But yeah, that looked nasty, according to the record photos. But that's just history. Hopefully we're on our way out of this. The pubs and gyms opened as of yesterday. I enjoyed myself sort of going to the gym the first time. I'm seeing long lines outside of pubs and stuff. So with any luck, gigs will come back and slowly get back to normal. I know I'm waiting on it.
I mean, everybody's been locked away for quite a long time. I didn't realize really that, this lockdown came into effect around December, wasn't it? So it's been 4 months that we've been locked down. It's just insane. So
yeah, and I think it's been longer since the initial one of end of March last year, thinking about it as well, or at least it seems that way. So, but regardless of all that, though, you guys in the Infernal Sea, I don't want to say you're in your element, but you sure as hell sort of stayed productive throughout that. I mean, you only went and bloody released an album through it all sort of late last year. Excuse me if I'm saying this wrong. Negotium Crucis. I had to listen to it, even the opening track, the Destruction of Shum. I'm just thinking, yes, the lads are back. We'll get into that. What I wanted to do with you here, I kind of want to try and see if we can do sort of the idiot's guide to the Infernal Sea, because you guys have been at this for well over a decade now. I'll give a brief bio, but feel free to correct me. My understanding is you formed in 2010 and just been kept going ever since. You sort of came in with the intention of playing black metal, and over time you've sort of slowly worked on the image until you sort of settled on the plague doctor masks and the whole bubonic plague and sort of songs about sort of various events throughout sort of our brutal history, especially on the English shores. And you just haven't stopped. I think it's you're one of those guys which I sort of managed to find in sort of my haunt, sort of the unicorn. And I could already tell then the sound was clear. You guys knew exactly what you were going to, but you were going that sort of extra mile to make it count. But yeah, maybe you could just sort of start us off sort of how, you guys sort of came about initially.
Well, as you said, we started in 2010. We'd all been in bands previous to the Infernal Sea, and we just got to the point where we were like, we want to try and create some. At that time, it was sort of like blackened death metal in a way. The first album, Call of the Arga, has got very much a heavy death metal influence to it, and we kind of set out to, create an East Anglian black metal band, because there wasn't really any either. And we'd got to that point where we just thought, why not, let's give this a go. And Yeah, so we went down that route, and we just kind of evolved our sound as we moved along the albums, and each release, you know, it became more and more blackened as we went on. I think that's how we initially wanted to sound, but I think the influences from our previous bands and stuff had kind of melded itself into what we wanted to be in the first album. So, you know, it was a statement of intent. You know, with that album, we practiced that one solidly for about a year before we recorded, and just we wanted to make sure that the songs were strong, you know, the recording was good, that we just wanted to make an impact when we came out with that album. And it did. It made waves straight away, which is, you know, puts on a good footing to start with. So and then we just got more and more visceral and hateful as we've gone along, really.
Yeah, I want to start there because Call the Augur is still one I still listen to this day because there's some absolute bangers on there. Like the opening track, Prayer for Cleansing, just coming straight in, just letting yourselves be heard. You're right in saying it was there was a sort of a bit more sort of death metal influences there. Like if you look at a track like Condemned to Psychosis, there's sort of like semi-technical riffs sort of in there. And if that wasn't enough, your boy, Mr. Burke, it rolls off the tongue quite nice. He's just busy just blasting away and just making mincemeat of his kit. And if that wasn't enough, you could see him just sort of doing like, you know, just like headbangs and sort of like swirls with his hair behind the drum kit. Like, I don't know many drummers that could do that. So, and I already knew of his endeavors from when he was playing in the Argent Dawn back in the days of when you had sort of like a whole bunch of sort of like MySpace deathcore bands come in sort of around 2008, 2009, that kind of era. So, but it sounds like, yeah, as you said, you were sort of coming in there from all different sort of subgenres, trying to sort of put in the core for this, you know, typically what was traditionally an exclusively Norwegian sound. Well, not exclusively, but originated there for sure, at least in the second wave.
Definitely. And as you say, you know, like with the influences we had from previous bands, that is very prevalent on that album, you know, like with James being in the Argent Dawn and stuff, he's going to bring that death metal style into it. And I think as we've progressed, we've kind of utilized those influences and kind of made them our own now. So, you know, which is a good thing because, you know, some of us come from punk backgrounds, hardcore backgrounds, death metal backgrounds. It's all in the Infernal Sea that, you know, we mix everything to good effect. So I think it was a good starting point for us. You know, we were dual guitarists then as well, which made a big difference. And then he decided to leave, and that's when we decided to stay as a four-piece, which okay. I think that's when the sound just completely started to change because, you know, our guitarist is just a phenomenal, you know, we call him the Riff Master General, but like he's just a phenomenal songwriter. So, you know, with him on his own at the helm, it was just perfect for us, really.
Yeah, Jonathan, or Jonah of the Sea, as he's called on Instagram, I think still. He definitely sort of nails that sort of those really icy cold riffs that are relevant to the genre. He almost does it with sort of like a scaring accuracy at times as well, which is quite unique. I mean, I'm guessing sort of after that period, you sort of had your set of shows. One thing I was going to move on to though is because you had a sort of a small EP release called the Crypt Sessions. Now, my understanding of that release is that was recorded was it recorded live in a place called the Crypt?
Yeah, so we had a rehearsal space called the Crypt, which was just the worst place. It was always fucking freezing cold. Like it was just grim in there. But you know, that's all that was available around where we lived. So we used to practice there, and we felt fitting that, you know, let's record a live session there. You know, it was just a couple of overdubs and that was it. But yeah, that was kind of just to capture where we were headed song-wise and direction-wise, and we feel that's the start really for the Infernal Sea for me, is where we started to shift and become that more black metal band that we wanted to be when we initially started. we all seem to record in winter as well, which is awesome, you know, being in a black metal band, winter, you know, inspiration and stuff. But yeah, that crypt place was fucking freezing. So, you know, we were all trying to warm up so he can play drums and play guitar and warming up the vocals. It was tough, but you know, it kind of adds to the vitriol of that recording.
Yeah, and I think some of your better songs came out of that. Skinwalker, which I think you guys tend to revisit quite a bit, especially in your live sets. That came out of those sessions initially.
Yeah.
That, because I remember reading a description. Skinwalker has a bit of a lyrical theme behind it. It's about a certain historic figure. Is that right?
It is. It's about a German guy called Peter Stumm that was basically believed he was a werewolf, and he used to go around hunting and killing people. And he actually devoured the brain of his own child. Like this guy was brutal. And like he believed it so much that when he put on his magical belt, which was blatantly just a belt, he would turn into a werewolf. But yeah, the guy was fucking bonkers and killed quite a few people. But it made for an interesting subject, you know. So, and that was where we started on some of the releases. We kind of delve into the sort of serial killer aspect of things. We did that with Agents of Satan, and obviously did that with Skinwalker. So we've dabbled with that in the past. We tend to find that our EPs and our splits are more geared towards that sort of concept, you know, of killers and stuff, and then our albums seem to be more following the lines of medieval history.
Yeah, because by this point, I think it was when I discovered you guys, you know, doing circuits around London. I think it was around what it was. It was a buddy of mine, Terry Clark. I don't know if you remember him. He was just telling me, come down. The Infernal Sea's playing. I had no idea who you guys were, and I came to see you guys. And at the time, you were sporting hoodies, trying your best just to mask stuff. You weren't going for the full sort of corpse paint kind of look with what was atypical for a lot of black metal bands and trying and stuff. But I remember it being very tonally clear, especially for, you know, a venue like that. It's just like all the riffs, all the drum beats, even the bass, everything was just coming through. Like I could understand what I was hearing. Because often when you go to see like very loud bands, no matter what genre, you can get things just kind of lost in the acoustics a lot of the time. But you know, I remember being quite impressed by you guys at the time. And yeah, pretty much sort of followed you ever since. And I think it was around that time, or coming into sort of 2014, you had a split with Old Corpse Road where you released the track Tannis Roots as well.
Yep.
Give to us a child on the days of mine.
Yeah, I mean, listening to Tannis Roots, and I think I remember you telling me this personally when we were chatting. There's a lot of Immortal influence going into the guitar riffs of that. Like I could hear sort of like all the sort of the better Norwegian bands coming out in a single track around then. But no, how did that split come about anyways?
I think it came about, we played a random show in King's Lynn of all places. A friend of ours had booked us on Old Corpse Road, and to be honest, when we got booked and we turned up to this pub in King's Lynn on, you know, I don't know if you've ever been to King's Lynn, but it's an absolute shithole. So when we got there, we just thought this is going to be the worst fucking show ever. You know, it was just like, man, you know, when you just get them vibes when you're just like, oh, that suck. And, you know, we set up and we were just thinking, oh, so we, you know, fucked off, got some food, waiting for the show to start and stuff. And, it turns out it was one of the best shows that we did in the early days. Like, it was rammed because there's nothing to do in King's Lynn. It meant that the place was absolutely packed. You know, it was sold out. It was a great show, and we actually just got to know Old Corpse Road because I think we played before them, and they all came up to us after the set and basically said, "How the hell are we going to follow that? Like, that was just unbelievable." And we were like, "Well, that's what we do," you know. So it was, you know, we kind of sparked up a friendship with them, and ever since then we just kind of said, you know, it would be really cool to do a split, and you know, it'd be just a good idea to put it out on vinyl. And I don't think Old Corpse had done a vinyl release at that point, so yeah, it just kind of made sense for us. You know, we were kind of up and coming, and Old Corpse Road had been around probably for maybe a couple years before us, and it kind of made some waves. So yeah, it was fun. It was fun to do. And then we played, you know, many shows with Old Corpse Road and kept that friendship. So
yeah, I think I do recall seeing them as well, and being I think I did enjoy them as well. And I think much like yourselves, I think didn't they bring out their own beverage as well as merch at some points? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Probably, but that seems to be the thing that bands do. We'll touch upon that a bit later, though, because that's a whole other conversation. But because around this time now, keep thinking sort of chronologically here. It was about this time now that you started sporting what were essentially sort of like, well, big rubbery sort of plague doctor masks in your live sets, and I'm just thinking, oh, that's cool. Little did I know, though, that this would actually segue into what you were going to release, which was the Great Mortality. And I remember seeing the cover art, you guys revealing the cover art, and this is drawn by it's Richie Beckett. Now, this is a guy that's went on to actually sort of do designs for like Mastodon, Metallica, a lot of big names. So the guy's no slouch. But I'm just looking at this and thinking, oh fuck, have they raised the game here? And then you release the track Way the Wolf. I'm thinking, oh shit, now they fucking stepped up. How did it all come about with the Great Mortality? Because this it was essentially a concept album about the bubonic plague, 1349, right?
Yeah, so that period, we've been donning the masks for a little while before then, and
yeah,
I've always been really interested in history, and I just wanted to explore the bubonic plague, and it accompanies the music perfectly, so it was the right thing to do for us. And I kind of like concept albums, and I feel that music is now becoming slightly lost art, or the album as such is becoming a lost art, in that people just listen to certain tracks and that's how they consume their music now. But I grew up in a period where you listen to the whole album, and a lot of them were concept albums back then, and I kind of wanted to have that. We wanted to make sure we had 8 tracks that all followed a theme, so that it just carried that hatred from the beginning to the end, but it kind of told a story as well. Actually, we'd been writing them songs for quite a while. I think we'd had them probably for a year again before we recorded The Great Mortality. And then we just decided to go in the studio, and then that's when we kind of contacted actually, it was Mordgrim at the time, which was a small label run by the guy who used to run Cacophonous Records.
Oh, yeah.
So we contacted Mordgrim and said, look, would you be interested? We'd seen that they'd done a couple of low-key black metal releases before. And he got back to us and he said, no, I'm not interested in releasing it on Mordgrim. And we were like, oh, all right, fuck. All right, okay. And he was like, I'm kickstarting Cacophonous Records again. I actually want to put it out as the first band on the reunited Cacophonous. And we were just like, whoa, like Cacophonous in the 90s released Dimmer Borgir, Cradle of Filth. It had so many good bands, Psy, Gehenna. So yeah, it just kind of evolved from there. So we'd already had the album recorded before we gave it to Cacophonous to put out, and the rest is history from there, really.
Yeah, and I think you boys, if you didn't go all in before, for this album in particular, you definitely raised your game, because it was a concept album. Like a lot of it's essentially 8 tracks, but 8 very unique tracks. There's a lot going on, and I got a lot of favorites on there as well. Entombed in Darkness, Plague Herald. But there was one in particular which I don't think gets a lot of discussion. I thought was actually fucking unique genius. It's the 3rd track, The Bearer. On that, you got it's like an 8-minute track, and you got a cello player on there, and it goes through the sort of fast motions, and then it slows down, breaks it down, and it's like sad and agonizing all at once. And I'm just like, God damn. So
The Bearer seems to be a fan favorite of everybody's. It was very different to what we'd done before. but it did have kind of the elements of Into the Unknown, which was on the Crypt Sessions. That was another long track that kind of ebbs and flows. And yeah, you know, we the way that each track is organized on that album as well has a special place. You know, we wanted that album to kind of hit you in the face straight away with, you know, Way of the Wolf. So it hits you hard, and then it kind of changes and becomes quite, like you say, atmospheric and emotional. And then it smacks you again, and it takes you back on that journey. And that was important to us. You know, it was about that journey of just how horrible a time it would have been, you know, living during that plague, where just thousands and thousands and thousands of people were just dying like daily. You know, like we feel like we probably captured that turmoil in the album.
Yeah, and to put it into some historical context, there was like a lot of superstition going on. Like, you know, England being the big Christian country that it was then, there was this fear, I think, that the plague was either God's wrath, or they had this idea that it was something to do with smells and vapors. So what you ended up having with these gentlemen with these long beaked masks, and they'd often put like, was it like sort of herbs or something at the end of the beaks just to prevent the odors, essentially. And there were all kinds of sort of crazy and almost sort of like just unimaginable events and killings without prejudice as a result of this. I mean, the track Entombed in Darkness, that's about just sort of like how they would basically entomb people in the homes and draw like an X on that. And I think it just reminded me as well. You released a cassette tape version of that album, and one of your unique merch ideas was to put that cassette tape in a sort of a wicker bag with an X drawn on it. I think I got that still around somewhere. I'm thinking, yeah, that's smart. That's pretty good.
Yeah, we did that with a cassette, and we did a box set as well that came with like came with incense sticks of the smells that they would have put inside their masks, and it came with all the hay, because they used to stuff hay in there as well, and it came marked as well, you know, X marks the spot. And yeah, it was some really cool marketing to go with that, really. But yeah, it was a brutal time. It was the wrath of God, you know. Basically people thought they were being punished because they were sinning, and the church basically said, well, you know, sin, this is your punishment, you shall die by the plague. They also believed that the plague was, you know, from the devil. They believed as well that it escaped through the spirit of the eyes of the dead. So when they died, this spirit came out and infected people. And, you know, they clearly didn't understand, but the fear is what kept everybody in line.
The parallels to the last year almost. Fuck me.
Well, this is the thing. If you look back at the history, you look at you know, what we've sung about on the Negotium Crucis, you look about what was sung about on the Great Mortality, things haven't changed. You know, It's like we haven't really learned from these past mistakes and these past events, and history just keeps repeating itself, and it's worrying. You know, obviously each time it gets slightly better. It's not as, you know, this plague is obviously not as drastic as, you know, the Black Death, because that one was horrific, but like things kind of do change slightly, but we're still kind of repeating, you know, what we've done. And yeah, the way that we're handling it is the same that we did back then, and basically not having a fucking clue what we're doing. Which is worrying.
It is worrying. And as I said, I joked earlier that you guys called it, but to be honest, like, these sorts of things, you know, there's a lot you can learn from history, and there's a lot of mistakes that are not worth repeating, and that's just one of them. Now, the concept and everything, it just all fell into place. But one thing I should point out is your vocals on that album, fucking inhumane at times. Like, whereas like before you had like you had your mixture of sort of like your screeches and your gutturals on previous releases. This one was just like full throat demon sounding stuff as well. Like, you clearly tapped into something that was pushing this as well.
I think I found my feet there. I realized that the shrieks, you know, I felt comfortable doing the shrieks. I could give it as much power and give the songs loads of impact by just doing them shrieks, you know, and just experimenting a little bit more. But yeah, as most people would say, you know, doing the daily grind, doing the same shit every day, you know, getting pissed off with life and such, you know, it's great to just actually fucking vent out. And also, like, the macabre nature of the lyrics kind of helps, that vitriol in my voice and that spit come out, because you're singing about horrific stuff and you can't sing it in a half-assed way. You've really got to fucking shriek it and just go for it, you know. So yeah, I did, you know, that I pushed myself on that one. That one's completely different to what we'd done previously.
Most people would probably settle for video games to relieve stress, but nah, good job there though, dudes. Like, seriously though, like, I still listen to that album. And try not to fangirl too much over it. One thing I know I touched upon this briefly, because the live shows matched what you were sort of promoting on that album, because not only did you have sort of the masks, you also, I don't know how you convinced sort of the you know, the light techs to do this. You always had these green lights just bearing down every time you were on stage with, you know, a bit of fog coming in and stuff like that. It just really added to the atmospheric experience you guys were trying to portray, and more or less nailed it every time.
It's something that we've always ensured that we get right every time we play. It's important to us to have that lighting, to have that atmosphere, because, you know, to be honest, you don't want to have the lights really bright and see the band, you know, just dressed in the robes and the masks, because it kind of takes away that eeriness. Like, if you make it as dark as possible with that horrible green light and as much smoke as possible, it silhouettes us and it makes it even more fucking terrifying, you know. I remember going to see Gorgoroth, and I saw Gorgoroth. I didn't see them. There was so much fucking smoke, you couldn't see anything. And all I occasionally saw was Host put up his arm, and he had like a spike, and the light was glimmering off the spiked armband, and that's all you saw, and him just fucking shrieking. And I was just like, this is horrible. And I was like, but this is fucking awesome, you know. That for me was just capsulated Gorgoroth perfectly, because visually you couldn't see anything. It was, you felt uncomfortable, and the music was just battering you, and you were just like, this is how black metal should be, you know. And I feel like, you know, we've kind of adopted that and changed it to suit us. And also, we wanted to stand out from the other bands. Like, all the other bands would just use the house lighting. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to change it and make it us, so that people would know when the green lights were on and the smoke was on, this was the Infernal Sea.
Yeah, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the genre we're playing as well, because there's always theatrics tied to, you know, black metal as well. And you guys had your own sort of unique take on that, which was another thing that drawed me as a sort of like an audience member and as a consumer, especially as things sort of just got more and more, and you kind of built more and more on the image until what it is today as well. One thing I wanted to bring up as well, because I actually don't know sort of how this came about. There was a particular gig that you did in a cave in Luxembourg, I think it was.
Yeah. So we'd done a couple of tours, small tours in Europe at that time, playing Belgium and France and Holland and stuff. And we'd been asked to play Luxembourg. And I think we'd played Luxembourg once before we did the cave, I think. So we'd played some small little venue in Luxembourg, and the guy that put it on basically said, look, I organise this festival called the Rotten Stones, and I'd love for the Infernal Sea to come and play. And we're like, yeah, that's cool. And he was like, basically, it's in the alcove of a cave, overlooks the forest in the middle of Luxembourg. And we were just like, yeah, this is going to be incredible, you know. So yeah, so we got asked to play there, and it was phenomenal. Like, the acoustics were fucking terrible because you're in an alcove of a cave, but you know, the atmosphere of it was just amazing. It's like an amphitheater, the alcove of the cave, and literally when I was looking out into the crowd, all I could see was the full moon over, sort of like glistening the top of the forest, you know. And it was just like, wow, this is amazing. Like, it doesn't get any better than playing a fucking cave in a forest in Luxembourg, you know. And we actually went back and played it again. So we played there twice, and you know, both times have been phenomenal. So we've been quite lucky that we've we've got to experience a few interesting shows like that. We played a festival in the south of France, which was basically just in the middle of a forest in a cabin, where you basically just have to, if you need a shit, you got to do it in the woods. There was no toilets; it was just that cabin, and and we played like Felford Woods in Lake Windermere, and black metal and forests, as we all know, just go hand in hand. So it's the perfect idyllic location for any band to play, really.
One only needs to look at so many different photo shoots.
That's the good thing, is you can play a show and you can do your photo shoots while you're there, and you're now two birds with one stone. So
amazing. There's a charm to it. You can't hate it. You can't hate the game, really. And I suppose it's that sort of I guess it ties back to sort of almost that sort of pagan worship of nature that sort of formulated much of the sort of the founding bands, especially in the second wave as well. Now, another thing I was gonna ask, several things I'm gonna ask, because one last point about the Great Mortality was, if I'm correct in understanding, self-recorded by you guys, or at least self-recorded by your drummer in his studio he calls the Noise Cabin. Is that right?
Yeah. So actually, pretty much every release we've done has been self-recorded. Call of the Arga, Call of the Ark is the only exception. We did actually go to a studio to get it done, but we got royally fucked over on it. So then we kind of ended up handling the duties ourselves. And that was kind of the early days of the recording process. So personally, I don't like the recording of that album, but we were learning. Crypt Sessions was when James started to take the helm of things. And then with the Great Mortality, we basically just went in, recorded it at the Noise Cabin with James, and then we sent it off to get mixed and mastered by someone else. But yeah, that was kind of the start of where, James, at that point when the Great Mortality came out, that'd probably be 5 years into the band. So he knew the style, he knew how I wanted to sound, he knew how Jonathan wanted to sound, and Chris and Jeff, and it was kind of like, it made sense to go with him because we could take a bit longer to record as well. We didn't have the 2-week restrictions and, the $5,000, $6,000 or whatever it is to record. Like, we kind of could say, right, we got a month and we can really fine tune that guitar sound, and get the perfect sound we want, and, get the drums sounding as good as we want them. And, I can do as many takes as I need, really, which, I didn't need too many, but like, it's kind of good to have that flexibility. And I think that shines through on the album, because when you're rushed, if you go into the studio for 2 weeks, you tend to find it's 3 or 4 days for the drums, it's a day or 2 for guitars, it's a day for bass, and then you've got 2 days to do 8 tracks on vocals, which fucking destroys your voice, because you're just, what people don't know is that you're not going in and recording just 4 songs. You end up doing takes. So you probably end up doing, say you do the song 4 or 5 times, well, you times that by the 4, that's 20 times. That's more times than you're actually playing songs in a set. So your voice is not used to it. And then obviously the rest of it is mixing and mastering. So yeah, this allowed us to be a lot more flexible. The only downside to it is, if you don't have a deadline, then you can, obviously, months can go by and you're still doing it. But that's just something you need to do, isn't it?
Yeah, but I guess great creative outlets like that can't truly be rushed. And besides, I imagine there's quite a nice sort of liberating feeling of being self-sufficient like that as well.
Yeah, 100%. Because again, it's all in our hands. We know what we want to sound like, and perhaps going to somebody else and we might not get the same results. We might get better results. Who knows? Because we haven't really experimented with that with this band. But if we go in and don't get the results we want, we'd just be like, well, we could just do this ourselves. More freedom to do what we want.
And it's also worth noting as well, James also uses the Noise Cabin to record other artists, so he's kind of turned that into a bit of a business for him now as well.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, check it out if you haven't.
Yeah, do so. There was a great Casket Feeder EP recorded there. Now I think we should come to the time where we, meaning you and I, kind of got professionally involved in the Plague Herald vid. Because beforehand you were just kind of making your own stuff. And being sort of the big fangirl I was, kind of just contacting you guys and just saying like, look, let's give this a try, kind of thing. What resulted, I mean, to be fair, it was very well organized. I mean, you guys hired the venue up in Milton Keynes. Its name escapes me. I brought in a makeup artist, and basically the idea was just to recreate both your live set with the green lights and the masks and everything, as well as kind of give sort of a bit of narrative bulk on sort of essentially what was going down during that time, what was essentially the concept of the Great Mortality. When it came to shooting, I mean, I remember like one of my lenses broke at the time. Luckily, your photography friend who was there, Jay Russell, let me borrow his. And I remember we had the makeup artist kind of do you all up in this sort of like all this makeup effects, looking like you had basically the bubonic plague all over like hands, face, in James's case, in his entire body. And for the most part, that went fine. And then a week later, we go to shoot sort of in your neck of the woods, quite literally. I had an actor lined up and he kind of dropped out. And to this day, I still don't know what happened to that guy. But luckily, the guy we got there just to do that and run around just looking scared for all hell, he fucking nailed it. And what's very interesting, and I'm surprised that you guys managed to find this, was that mace. That mace that used to belong to, was it Euronymous of Mayhem?
Yep. Yeah. So there was only 3 or 4 of them made. Obviously the main one being the guy that we won't name, but they were owned by the key members of the second wave of black metal. So the one we had was supposedly owned by Euronymous, and actually this was confirmed by one of the guys from Octaris, because he makes replicas. His name escapes me at the moment, but he makes replicas of them, and they actually contacted us probably a year or so ago, and were just inquiring about the mace and whether we still had it. And I was like, well, actually, this belonged to our friend, and we put him in touch. But he brought that mace off of Morgan from Marduk. And the great thing about that is he just randomly brought it on eBay. So Morgan from Marduk was selling the mace, which he had been gifted, I think, from Euronymous. He'd listed it on eBay and sold it. And this mace just turned up in the post with all like the fucking studs sticking out of the parcel. And my friend was like, how did this not get held at customs, but we get it through, and he paid quite a lot of money for it. And this thing is brutal, you obviously saw it and held it. And
when I saw it, I knew immediately, okay, we got to club the actor with this thing.
Like it was just really well made and just fantastic, but also a great piece of history for us to have in the video, because it was our little homage to that second wave to say, this used to be Euronymous. This is great to have. And he was actually sent a lot of stuff by Morgan as well, and he was given loads of like copies of old letters and photos and stuff like that they used to trade between each other, which was really cool. There was a lot of history involved with it. But when I was holding that, my friend was like, don't fucking break this. I'm gonna come with you. He accompanied us on that shooting.
That's right, we dressed him up.
But that was a really cool piece. I think Shagraf had one as well.
And I think Varg was seen with one of those in a very infamous photo or something much like it.
Yeah, so the 3 that had it, was Varg, was Shagraf, and was Euronymous. I think there may have been one other, but I'm not too sure. But it's they were pretty cool items. But I think the obviously the Varg one was destroyed. The Shagraf one, I don't know if that's still out there somewhere. But yeah, the fact that the other one is local to us is just insane,
I hope that gets preserved somehow. Like that sort of thing, that sort of piece. You'd think it would belong in a museum or some kind of exhibition. Well, who knows, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It'll probably end up on eBay in 10 years' time, you know,
and sell for a lot more.
Yeah, exactly. Or end up in an attic somewhere, lost for hundreds of years, and someone will find it and think that, you know, we were a brutal race of humans back then that used to club people with maces.
No, the worst they did was murder occasionally and burn churches with that.
Exactly.
I remember as well around that time you were telling me, because you kind of wanted to sort of evolve the sound of the band as well, because you were sort of taking on a lot more sort of not just sort of your black metal influences, but you were sort of infusing a lot of sort of like punk D-beat kind of sort of influences into the music as well. I mean, I'm guessing that sort of transpired into some of the tracks into later releases like Agents of Satan.
Yeah, we'd always been intrigued by that, the rock and roll aspect of it. We've always said that we're a metal band, you know, that plays kind of rock and roll. So to start injecting that into our music, it was there in Plague Herald. And obviously when, you know, we came out with Agents of Satan, it was a statement for us, because it was like, this is where we're headed. This is our new direction, you know, and we just wanted to add that punky element because, again, we'd come from that background. A lot of us grew up listening to punk, or a few of us played punk bands or hardcore bands or whatever. And that influence, we just wanted to get in there. You know, we're all massive fans of the new wave of British heavy metal, and to inject that sort of old school feel into it, you know, that Motorhead vibe into it, is just kind of where we wanted to be. And I don't think it's not a drastic change. I think them influences are there in our early releases. You know, Skinwalker's kind of got that groovy, dare I say it, breakdown section in it. And same with Into the Unknown. It's kind of got them, you know, their mid-paced sort of black and roll riffs. And so they were there. We just felt we wanted to bring more of that into our music. And that's, you know, and Agents of Satan was the statement to say, this is us now. And I think, you know, Great Mortality cemented us, and I think from then on we just found our feet, and that was it.
Yeah, and by that point your image was also there to stay, and in fact you kind of improved it as well. You from going from what it initially started out as just sort of like hoodies with the masks, you then invested in sort of not only sort of full gowns on each of you, but then you also, on some shows, I remember you saying you had sort of extras just hold like lanterns there as well. I'm just thinking, oh, that's a great touch.
Well, that was, again, we were leading up to that. You know, we did the hoodies, we did the early stages of the masks were kind of like some, I don't know what material they were, but they were kind of like a lightish brown material. You know, and they did the job for the time, but they're looking back at them, they were cheap, you know. Then we kind of went into the black sort of leather look plague masks that were kind of bondage-esque, I suppose, in a way. And then we wanted something that was just a bit more horrific. And we basically went to a guy who created these masks for us, and we decided that we wanted to do the full outfits, you know, the full robes and the full mask. And that actually came about because we did the photo shoot for them to usher in a new age of the Infernal Sea, but we debuted them at Bloodstock. So no one had seen us really play in them robes and their mask, all with the Agents of Satan, the guys that hold the lanterns for us. Until Bloodstock, we heard that, and everyone was just like, "Holy shit!" You know, these guys have upped their game. You know, and as you said, the menacing servants that we call Agents of Satan standing there and holding these really fucking heavy lanterns, which is grueling because, you know, we play for an hour and these lanterns are really heavy, and everybody comes off and complains about it, but we're just like, well, whatever, you know, shut up and hold them. But they just have like a menacing presence, and that kind of adds to the, you know, the atmosphere of the show.
Yeah. And that kind of, I know we've talked a lot about the sort of the imagery and the theatrics, but I find myself really drawn to even just sort of like even the smallest act making an attempt at that, because that sort of thing stays with you. You know, I think a lot goes unsaid for the experiences, the sort of live gigs as well. You know, especially now that we haven't had any for a year and I'm starting to miss them. And you remember the good ones, you remember the ones that stand out. And this is you guys basically making that attempt, and I think succeeding just to get into the brains of us mere punters. But coming back to the actual release, Ages of Satan, I remember thinking when hearing it, this sounds a lot punchier. I mean, it's the track Agents of Satan and a re-recording of Skinwalk, and I'm just thinking, whoa, this is definitely punchier.
It was a lot heavier sounding, wasn't it? Recording wise, it just kind of hit home really. Yeah, it was good, and it was a bold statement as well, because we released it on a picture disc. It wasn't a split, it was us. And for a band to just go, here's a picture disc with this new style and a re-recording of a classic, we were just like, it was kind of a big like, hey, fuck you, listen, like here is our new stuff, and I think it really helped. And I think again, Grey Mortality put us on that ladder, and then Agents of Satan just kind of helped propel us a bit more.
And now we come to, I guess, was it 3 years later, coming into the present day, an actual pandemic's hit the world basically, and you come out with, basically another album, No Problem, basically, Negotium Crucis. I mean, how did that all come about, basically?
So we'd had quite a few of them songs floating around for a while. To be honest, we try to be as prolific as we possibly can. So we're always trying to write new material, and we'd come out of Agents of Satan. Probably a year later, we were still writing new material, and we'd come up with some of that stuff. And I think we'd recorded Negotium Crucis a year before it was actually released. So we've been sitting on that for quite a while, to be honest. So technically, for us, that's kind of old material, but. We've been sitting on it for a while, looking around to find the right label that we were happy with, and we decided that we would stick with Apocalyptic Witchcraft because they've been great for reissuing Great Mortality and doing the Agents of Satan release, and and then obviously the pandemic hit, and that was kind of when we were just like, oh fuck, because the album was supposed to come out in May 2020, but obviously with the pandemic hitting, we kind of postponed things slightly. Because nobody really knew whether this thing was going to blow over in 2 weeks, or no one really knew how much of an impact it would have if we were to release that album in May and it just fall flat on its ass. So we actually kind of decided to hold off on it for a couple of months before making a decision and saying, you know what, everybody's eyes are on the internet at the moment. Now is the perfect time to drop this album. And I think if we'd held off releasing that album till this year, I think it would still have done really well, but it might not have done as well as putting it out during a pandemic when everyone's housebound, because everyone's searching for new music, for an escape, aren't they? So I think every band that's put an album out during this pandemic has probably done very, very well from it.
Yeah, you are right. Like more eyes were going to be on sort of, the internet in terms of like, streaming music and whatever sort of like video content was released and all that sort of thing. And to be honest, it'd be a missed opportunity for a plague-based band to not release something during an actual plague. That's kind of a no-brainer.
Exactly. If there was one band that was going to ride through the pandemic easily, it was definitely going to be us, isn't it? So
yeah. And well, I was going to point this out, but no surprise, you made your own face masks with the logo. Had to be done. Really well.
Yeah, had to capitalize on it. They literally did really well, sold out instantly, and it's who, again, if any band's going to do it, it's going to be us, isn't it? And the great thing is people don't scoff at it. Everyone's just like, of course the Infernal Sea have just released fucking face masks. Yeah. No one questions it. No one gives a shit for it. It's great. You know, we're in a great position, really.
I do want to deviate though to some of your more clever merch ideas, because like I bought a few T-shirts off you guys throughout the years, and you know, a few CDs, the one cassette as well of The Great Mortality. But lately I've been seeing you guys get into areas I did not expect, not just you guys, but any band to do. Let's start off with the Infernal Tea, your own tea.
Well, everyone does wine, everyone does lager, everyone does coffee. Like,
yeah.
Why not tea? Yeah. We're an English black metal band. Like, what more could you want? Fucking tea. And we made sure that our tea was like black tea as well, to make it the blackest of black tea. But actually, the blends were inspired by actual medieval recipes and medicines that they used to give to people during, you know, the times of the plague. So, yeah, there was a lot of research and just a lot of research that went into that, and we tried a lot of blends. There was probably like 15 different blends, and you know, some of them were more quirky than others. Some of them were fucking horrible, you know, and some of them we were just like, no, this needs to be blacker. You know, it's not coming off as dark as we want it. But yeah, the company that we worked with, she was brilliant and really knew her stuff, you know, and she literally came back to us. She's like, this is the first time a satanic black metal band has ever contacted me. Of course I'll make tea for you, you know. And it was pretty awesome, and she really got into it. And yeah, and that's why we came up with the 3 blends that we did. And there will be more, you know. They've kind of sold out for the time being, but yeah, we will produce more at some point, because it's a great idea and everyone loved it, you know.
Yeah, that's just, I wouldn't have thought of that, to be honest. And it's like, it's the classic tea as well, where you get the strainer and everything as well. A very English British thing for sure. You know, anyone listening outside probably wouldn't get it, so I'm not even going to fucking explain it.
I mean, we called it the bubonic plague. You know, like our
yes.
pun game was on point with the Infernal Tea and the bubonic plague. We were just, it was going to be a win straight away, wasn't it?
Puns sell.
They do.
But if that wasn't enough as well, it was last month, 2 months ago, you brought out goddamn action figures. How do you go about making action figures?
Well, do you know what? We'd seen a guy that basically created custom figures, and you know, I kind of put it to the guys. I was like, look, guys, we've released fucking tea, you know, like let's do some action figures. And you know, and a few of us were a bit like, I don't know. And then, you know, a few of us were like, yeah, this is cool. And I was like, look, trust me on this. Like, this is going to be good. So kind of I rolled with it. Got this guy to produce them. And a lot of work went into them. Like, you know, there was a lot of to-ing and fro-ing with the guy. He basically handcrafts them. So he'll sculpt them. Then he'll basically make a mold, and he pours the resin in, and he would make, you know, the number that we needed. Then he'd hand paint them. He'd have to sand them down. Then we'd have to paint, you know, we've got somebody else to paint the sigil on the mask. Then we produced the card and the box. You know, there was a lot that went into it, and it took probably 3 months or so to get it all sorted and made. So, but as soon as I got them and I received the whole thing, I was just like, this is incredible. Like, you know, what more could anyone want? An action figure in themselves, you know what I mean? Like, it's a pretty cool merch idea. And again, we just thought, fuck it, let's just go for it. You know, like, we don't give a shit what anyone thinks about us. Like, if they're gonna slag us off because we made action figures, so what? You know, the people that fucking brought them and loved them, that's what matters to us. You know, the fans that are buying them and enjoy it is more so than the naysayers. So we were just like, fuck it, let's just go for this, let's make this action figure. And to be honest, it was you know, the reception was phenomenal, to be honest. So
like,
yeah,
didn't it sell out? They all sold out like almost within a day of releasing them or something crazy.
They sold out literally within a minute. I put them up and I said they go on, you know, they go live at 11 o'clock, and literally my phone was just like ping, 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 like constant. And I was like, fuck, I need to keep an eye on this. And I literally looked at the orders and I was like, shit, these have sold out. And they were instant. And so much so that we literally said, look, they've sold out so quickly, we'll produce another batch. but that's all we're going to do, you know. And then they literally sold out, you know. The rest of the day they had all gone, and we were just like, wow, you know, you couldn't ask for more. You know, a band releasing an action figure and it sells out instantly. It's, the demand is there, isn't it?
Well, clearly you wouldn't have thought so for such a weird idea, but proof's in the pudding.
But I think, you know, we're kind of iconic, like the way we visually present ourselves. So I think, again, going back to what I said earlier, like if any band's going to get away with it, we are, because of the way we look on stage. You know, like people see us live and they think, oh, they look fucking cool, or they look terrifying, or whatever. So to transfer that into a bespoke figure, it kind of works perfectly.
It's that, and you've been at this now for a decade, just over 10 years. So I think it's like over a decade's worth of hard graft that, you know, kind of really just is starting to pay off, especially with selling your own action figures. That's a fan base you can't be without, for sure.
No, definitely. And you know what, like our fans and our followers are so fucking good. Like, you know, they've supported us for so long, since the beginning. A lot of them have supported us since the beginning, and we couldn't ask for more, you know. Like, and we just seem to be getting more and more followers each release, which is, you know, what any band wants, really, isn't it? But yeah, we have got, you know, probably some of the best followers in the world. So hats off to you guys.
Infernal hails.
Exactly.
I should probably, because we only touched upon your recent album, but we might as well use the space to discuss it, because I already mentioned some of my favorites, because the opening track, Devoid of Fear, the title track, even the closing track, Rex Moindy, I'm thinking like, yeah, you know, there's a lot of the great mortality, musically speaking, that's on this album as well. So it's definitely really much sort of the same quality that I've now come to expect of you guys. I mean, concept-wise, it's not too different, but it is slightly. I mean, can you sort of explain what's going on there this time around?
Yeah, it's still set during the medieval times, but it's about the Knights Templar and the, you know, how the church sanctioned this military order to commit atrocities in the name of God, basically. So it just touches upon tales of, you know, during that period, and how the knights rose to power and then were quickly kind of swept under the floorboards when the church got a lot of backlash and realized, actually, we need to get rid of this military order and you know, put them to death, basically, and put them on trial. But yeah, so it kind of still has that medieval vibe, and it's still about the wrath of God and how the church controls people and how they use that control through fear. Yeah, so it kind of carries that same theme, but obviously, yeah, slightly different to the Great Plague.
Yeah, and you've managed to distribute this quite well, because you mentioned before you're with Apocalyptic Witchcraft label, and you've managed to get even physical copies, vinyls. I think I saw cassettes in there as well, still CDs. I mean, you still managed the distro quite all right, especially considering the time it was released.
Yeah, I mean, there was two versions of it released on vinyl. There was a silver and a black. They've sold out. There was a Die Hard box set, which is sold out. We released a Die Hard cassette, which sold out. The standard cassette, which was released on Hot Pink, which was actually a nod to the Mayhem misprint.
Yeah, I know the one.
They've all sold out. So literally, you know, us band-wise only have like the digipack CD at the moment, but yeah, so it's been insane. You know, the response has been great. Like the fact that all these formats are selling out is great for us.
That's good. And unfortunately, you haven't been able to promote it much in the live circuit. But then again, and I could be mistaken, but weren't you on a gig that was live streamed in February?
So there was supposed to be a live stream, and it kept getting pushed back. And basically, I think it got pushed back 3 times. So every time we went to do it, we'd practice for a couple of months leading up, and then we got fucking locked down. And it was, I think on the third time, I think the venue just kind of gave up, because it just seemed that the week before the event was supposed to happen, we were just locked down, and it was like, and it's difficult for us because we don't all live in the same location. So we all come from afar. We would have been traveling far down south with all the regulations and the rules. We're just kind of like, look, if the venue gets busted because these bands recording, you're only allowed so many people in a room at a time. There's 4 of us. If you're only allowed 6 people in there, that's your sound guy and 1 cameraman. Well, if anybody turns up, an official turns up and finds them, you're there to play the show to save the venue. Well, if they get a 10 grand fine, that's not going to save them, is it? So I think they kind of saw the logic and just kind of held off on it, really. But which is a shame, because we'd love to have done it, but I think, it just became a bit of an arse, really.
It's interesting, though, because like of all the groups I've sort of spoken to thus far, most were, they just sat this whole thing out. You guys at least tried to make the attempt at doing the thing that a lot of sort of more established bands are doing, which is like live streaming gigs and stuff like that. I'm kind of in 2 minds about that whole thing, but guys got to make a living, I guess. But yeah, no, it's just the thing. It's just what I keep saying about you guys. You guys just going for that extra push, that extra effort, just to get results. And it's clearly like a mindset you guys have of just sort of reaching and grabbing whatever opportunities you can get a hold of.
You have to learn and adapt, and you have to kind of stay ahead of the game with everything as well. Like there's so many bands out there, and obviously, coming out the other side of this pandemic, there'll most likely be less bands, to be honest, because people will reevaluate their lives and realize that maybe that's not what they want to do, or a lot of bands will fold. So maybe that'll sort of thin the herd down a bit. But that there are so many bands out there that you kind of need to stay A, relevant, and B, ahead of the game with everybody, so that you stand out. And I also think that because we all grew up listening to the old school sort of heavy metal bands, like your Kiss and like your Iron Maidens and your Metallica, they all put on good shows, and they put on big shows, and it was all about the show, and I think that's something that we pride ourselves on, that it's about encapsulating that show and then visuals to make us stand out above everybody else.
You mentioned before that was sort of a lost art, or at least you thought it was a bit of a lost art in recent years.
Yeah, the art of the album, I feel, is a lost art. Like you speak to a lot of younger people, because me and you are probably getting on a bit now, but like you speak to a lot of the younger generation, and they don't listen to albums as a whole anymore. And if you go back and listen to Iron Maiden, or you listen to Rainbow, or you listen to Deep Purples, or your Kiss, or any of them sort of 80s, giants, like it was about the album, like the whole album flow and ebbed, and it had a theme, very much like our stuff. Like we've taken that as an influence. Like we want you to, it's important that you listen to the first track as well as the last track, because they all connect. They're all interwoven in some way. And I feel like, for me personally, that's lost. And you get bands that release albums with 10 to 15 tracks, and 2 or 3 of them are okay, or good, and then the rest of them are a bit like it's filler, and that's a shame. I think a lot more bands should focus and go, right, we only need 8 songs on this album, let's make 8 fucking killer songs. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I was speaking to someone about this earlier as well. They reckon that music as well lately is consumed differently. It's not so much about what's listened to as well. It's like what's viewed. Like people are going to be on their phones or something, actually looking up bands, looking up sort of their promotional material, sometimes videos and stuff like that. They're sort of digesting it in a different way. And then you got social media to sort of contend with, and regular posts. The game's changed. Basically the game's changed from what our fathers or previous generations consumed previously.
It does, and it's about adapting to that, isn't it? And it's about trying to utilize that and still going with the with all your streaming sites as much as possible, utilizing Bandcamp, utilizing Spotify and Deezer and stuff like that, and also integrating that into your Instagram and Facebook. As long as you don't become a dinosaur and let it crush you, like you've got to run with it. But I think the fact that vinyl is mean, vinyl's always been there, but the fact that it's kind of on a rise again means that the ritual of buying an album and putting it on and flipping it over to listen to side 2 is becoming a thing again. And I think bands are realizing that as well, because with a 12-inch, you can only technically really get about 20-25 minutes on the side anyway, without compressing the shit out of it. So, you know, that means you've got 40 minutes to say what you want to say. And I think that's a good thing, because a lot of bands are now pressing on vinyl. It's not just whack it out on CD or stick it on streaming. Like, they want vinyl because vinyl's selling, you know, and there's so many collectors out there that want vinyl. So that can only be a good thing.
And you've managed to sell vinyls from a lot of your previous releases as well. I mean, how'd you go about doing that? Because that's not like an easy thing to sort of achieve. You know, there's not a lot of sort of legit vinyl pressers, if I'm understanding correctly.
There's not many left. I think when we did the split with Disinterred way back when, we were lucky because the band Disinterred are from Belgium, and they actually knew somebody that pressed. I can't remember where he said they were. They might have been in the Czech Republic or somewhere, but we got, you know, a fairly good deal on all that vinyl. But so it was a lot harder then, because they're, you know, 10 years ago vinyl wasn't as popular as it is now. But it has become popular with Record Store Day, and obviously with the sales increasing and stuff. It just means it's now actually more difficult to get vinyl pressed, because you're at the bottom of the queue. Because you know, Record Store Day, I don't know if you know Record Store Day.
I do, yeah. It usually comes around April each year.
Yeah, so I think they're doing it June and July this year. So there's always a couple a year, but you think they press what, 40, 50 releases in their thousands. Now, as far as I'm aware, there's a plant in the UK, there's a plant in Czech Republic. I think the UK plant actually ships to Czech Republic. So there's not many, there's a handful left. And obviously Record Store Day and the big record labels are taking priority. So smaller labels and smaller bands, you just sit on a back burner for a while. So Negotium actually was in production for 6 months. That's how bad it's going at the moment. But the pandemic is obviously not helping either. So, you know, but yeah.
No, that's fair enough, though. But it seems like you managed to get ahead on the queue on that one for what it was worth, delays included and all that.
Yeah, I mean, the vinyl for us didn't come out until December. We didn't get it back till December, and we'd obviously send that to press 6 months before. That's how insane it was. But we kind of knew that, you know, when we put the pre-orders up, we just kind of said, look, it'll turn up when it turns up. There's not much we can do about that at the moment. And people were, you know, sympathetic about it. So, but I feel that probably people are getting a bit pissed off now, not with us, but like in general with just things being delayed all the time, you know, because obviously now Brexit has just fucked us even harder, and things are just taking forever to turn up in this country at the moment, aren't they? So,
shipping costs and delays and the borders and all that. Yeah,
it's a pain. I saw somebody had ordered a T-shirt from America in August last year, and it turned up last week. That's how insane it is. You know,
shit. Oh, fuck.
Like, it's mental.
Yeah, there's a lot of ironing out to do in that regard, but some of those things, I guess, are sort of out of our control for the time being. One thing, we'll probably go to wrap this up soon, but I know you can't predict the future, but with things easing up now with the lockdown, I mean, as we're speaking, yesterday the pubs reopened. That's a good sign. As far as it looks, although it's subject to change, Bloodstock seem keen to go ahead even still, which is quite, you know, that's quite promising to look at. When gigs do return, I know I've probably said this a few times already, you're probably going to go get a wave of sort of other enthusiastic groups and attendees just wanting that gig culture back. I mean, what are your predictions for the future? But more importantly, I mean, what's the future looking like for the Infernal Sea?
So for 2021, we're just going to kind of ride this year out. I don't think we'll be playing any shows unless we get, you know, unless we book something towards the tail end of the year. But I honestly don't want to be a pessimist. You know, you want to try and remain optimistic, really. But I don't know if gigs are going to happen in any capacity this year. I guess it depends what happens in the next month or two. The fact that the vaccination has rolled out to half the population is a good thing. You know, and it's got to get to a point where we've just got to go get on with it. You know, you've been vaccinated, you're on your own now. There's not much we can do about it. This is a flu. You'll get that every year, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, obviously people are going to still be cautious. But I think we'll not potentially play any shows for this year. I think we'll just carry on writing. So we've actually been working on more new material. And then we'll look at 2022 when gigs look like they're all going to be returning in 2022. So I think that's when you'll start seeing us. So our only show that we've got booked at the moment is Incineration Fest with Emperor, which, you know, is a fucking great show to come back to. So,
wow.
You know,
Nice.
we might not do anything before then, to be honest, but we'll see. If the right shows come up, then we'll do them. But yeah, as you say, like, who knows? It chops and changes so much this past year, hasn't it? Like, nobody knows what's going to happen in the next few months, really.
No, and I'm getting tired of it as well. I mean, like I said, I had the sweet relief of going to the gym yesterday, so that's one small semblance of normality. But I guess we take for granted what we miss initially. So maybe next time around, you know, we'll probably just look back on this and think, Jesus Christ, this was a fucking crazy time of plague. And how smart or stupid did we actually act towards all this? You know, yeah. Some people may call it the blip, you know?
I think, you know, it looks like we're doing what we can. I mean, you know, we're not going out in the streets and people are dying on the streets as such. So you know, hiding away has its benefits, but at the same time, it just means you're not building up any immunity. So you can't keep hiding forever because we're never going to be immune to it, are we? And it is a strange one. I just personally feel that what's going on at the moment is exactly what we did last summer. And then they let all of us out, and then all of a sudden we got locked down again. So I'm just hoping that we don't get put into another fucking lockdown, because that will just break most people's spirit by then.
When they locked down in December, that broke me to an extent. I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake. So it's just like, no, not again. And you are right for saying that. They could pull this shit again by winter. I honestly hope not, but
I hope not. I'm hoping that what happens is we ride out this summer, we hit the next winter, and they actually go, you know what, stat-wise, it's a lot less than what it was last winter, which means that we're in good stead. You know, they can go, right, okay, we can start easing things, get everyone vaccinated, and we're on a good trajectory to get out of this. It's just if we hit that next winter and we spike again, then we're fucked. Because we just keep spiking every winter, you know what I mean? Like that's the worst time, that's the worst season for us, because, you know, that's when everyone gets ill, isn't it, in winter, because it's fucking cold. But
well, yeah, and there's a debate to be had about sort of annual flu season deaths as well. And I don't think we should cower at the sight of just spiking numbers all the time. As you pointed out, you know, eventually we got to get outside and sort of you know, get the herd immunity going at the least, if not the vaccine rollout.
Well, so. Wasn't the Spanish flu and the bird flu and stuff like 4 years before they kind of petered out? So maybe we've got another couple of years of this, which would be shit. But
maybe, but you got to think the Spanish flu was at a time before they had the conventional vaccine in circulation as well, if I'm understanding.
Yeah, that's probably.
So I mean, medical science wasn't exactly what it was even in the early 20th century. That was what it is today, sort of a product of a century's worth of research and development, trial and error. And it only continues to improve in some regards as well. Yeah. I just don't politicize it, you know.
It's not worth it, is it? You know, no. We're lucky that we live in the time we do, you know, because if we'd lived 100 years ago, or even longer, you know, not necessarily 100 years ago, that's not that bleak then, is it? If we lived like 500 years ago or whatever, we'd be fucked now, you know what I mean? Like, we're lucky that we can have medicine that can help us. And yeah, granted, you'll get loads of conspiracy theorists saying they're not sure what's in it, but, you know, you don't know what's in half the shit we eat and put into our bodies anyway. So, you know, it is what it is. And yeah.
And to be honest, that's paranoia and social media combined just talking right there as well, and that's a whole other fucking monster I don't want to have to deal with again. Jesus Christ.
Exactly. You know, and you could get the vaccine, it could kill me. I could be dead in 20 years anyway, so it doesn't really matter. It's like, if it just, I could either get the virus and die or get the vaccine and die. If I have a 50-50 chance, I'll just go with the vaccine.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. Well, not that negative, but yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, so fingers crossed, all being well, you know, gigs will return for us next year. Yeah, we're working on new material and just go from there, really. But we really want to play shows to support Negotium Crucis, because obviously us and many other bands in the same situation haven't been able to tour that. But obviously it comes to a point, doesn't it, where you can't 3 years later tour an album that you released 3 years ago. So yeah, you kind of just got to move on, really.
You do. Now I want to pose a question to you before we wrap up. Just a personal question to you. Over 10 years of doing this, what has been your own personal highlight throughout this very epic journey, of just basically celebrating darkness?
To be honest, there's been quite a few for me personally. Getting to perform at
Bloodstock. Name them all, please.
Getting to play at Bloodstock Festival Cup twice and Damnation twice is just, you know, dreams come true, because you're getting on that platform and playing to fucking hordes of metalheads that just, you know, lap it up. Releasing an album on Cacophonous was just incredible as well, because I grew up listening to the Cacophonous bands. So for me, that was just, you know, awesome. But, you know, and getting to play in a cave, getting to play in forests. I mean, we've done some cool stuff. I mean, you know, we've played with 1349 and we played with Abigail Williams. We played shows with fucking Mugler, Mayhem. We've played on bills, you know, at Bloodstock, it had Ghost and Slayer. You're like, how many times do you get to play shows like this? Like, we've been very fortunate, you know, in the bands that we've played with. We supported Napalm Death. Like, I've loved Napalm Death since I was 13, you know, so to support that band is just an incredible achievement. But I think the longevity of us and the fact that we're still churning out music and we still enjoy it, and the fact that it's been pretty much the same guys, like bar the bass player who has changed. Yeah, it's been the same guys for 10 years and we're just churning out this brutal, horrible music that people want to listen to. And we'll continue to do so as long as, you know, we want to and people like it. So yeah, 10 years of brutality is what I will say.
That is quite remarkable. That is remarkable. We'll have a chat afterwards, man. But until then, man, eternal and infernal, it hails, my friend.
And to you.
Take it easy.